There we go. Let's give it a couple minutes actually before we get started. I can see everybody just flooding in now. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks so much for joining us for this very informative session. For those of you asking for permission to record, please go on right ahead and record this session and share with your colleagues. It's a very important topic on how to maximize your training budget. So thanks to everybody who's joined us today. Oh, lots of familiar faces. Hi, Jasmine.
Hello.
How are you? How is everything going?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Good.
Excellent.
Good to see you on today's call. We're just going to be, we'll start at about 11:03. I can see everybody starting to join. Thanks for waiting, everyone. Hi, everybody who's just joined us. We'll give it 1 minute before we get started for today's session. I think we should be okay to go. Is that okay with the three of you?
Yep. Okay here. Sounds good.
Yep. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Today's webinar is going to be on No Budget, No Problem, Maximizing Your Training Budget, a guide to the Canada Job Grant, a program that offers invaluable opportunities for businesses to enhance their workforce through subsidized training initiatives. Today's webinar will be hosted by Amato DiCivita and Tony Martino, co-founders of JTX. We also have joining us today our esteemed guest, Brian Cookson, President and CEO of RDP Associates, who will provide expert insights into maximizing government funding opportunities for your organization. Just for some quick housekeeping rules before we get started, kindly note that all of today's attendees have been automatically placed on mute upon entry for a seamless experience. However, we do encourage active engagement. So should you have a burning question or wish to share your insights, please feel free to unmute yourself when prompted during today's designated opportunities. Alternatively, you can always use the chat function in your Zoom dashboard throughout the session to place any questions and comments. We'll just get to them at the very end. To let everybody know, this webinar is being recorded and the link will be distributed to all CPSA members shortly after the session concludes. Just a quick word on the CJG, the Canada Job Grant. This is a really, really important program that tackles workforce challenges in Canada. And one of the primary reasons that CPSA is such a huge advocate for the grant is that it provides employee training, which has been proven to directly boost productivity. The CPSA, as most of you know, is dedicated to advancing the sales profession and to allow salespeople the opportunity to really upgrade their skills, advance their careers, and earn industry-recognized designations. The Canada Job Grant aligns with this objective as it seeks to develop a skilled and very capable workforce. For as long as the CPSA has existed in Canada, this will be our 150th year, the Canadian Professional Sales Association has been there to support and advance the sales professionals with tools, sales training, and resources that accelerate their success. We always encourage our partners to use the Canada Job Grant funding because it allows the growth and development of skilled salespeople to then shape the future success of sales. Now, let's begin our session on maximizing your training budget, a guide to the Canada Job Grant with Brian, Tony, and Amato.
All right, thanks, Rupin, and thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Tony Martino. I'm a co-founder and co-president of JTX. And JTX, happy to collaborate with CPSA. We've been a partner of CPSA's for a number of years now. And our goal today is really to inform Canadian companies of probably one of the best grant programs around. That it's a joint effort between provincial governments and federal governments, and you're going to find out more about that today as we go through the session. So JTX itself, we're a Toronto-based consulting firm that specializes in helping companies, all sizes, grow their sales volume and their profits. And we use state-of-the-art assessments and training approaches that that help achieve that. And again, working with CPSA in many instances as well, where we help achieve that for organizations. Brian is going to join us. He'll have a chance to introduce himself later on, and he's the president of RDP. But in terms of what we're looking at doing today, really, our goal is to talk about what the Canada Job Grant Program is. Many people do know about it, but not as many as should. And so, there's certainly funding available for some of the training that we all do, and that's important for all of you through these government programs. And we'll talk a little bit about how some of these programs are going to benefit you and some of the process for applying and for getting reimbursed for some of the spending, as well as some of the things that you can't get a grant for. So, we want to make sure that you know that as well. You'll get an understanding of what your company can qualify for. There are some differences by province. There are some differences by size of company. And then we're going to get into a little bit around, why training is important. Rupin alluded to it, and how it can improve productivity and improve employee engagement as well. So, those are very key things that we want to make sure that we accomplish. Thanks, Rupin. Slide. So again, our goal for today, make sure that you understand some of the basics and of the grant program and how it can help you in your workforce development. There are those variations that I mentioned throughout the country. Different provinces have some different ways of how they approach the grant program. So trying to create some familiarity, although I think we're going to focus primarily on Ontario, but you'll get a good sense of what it means elsewhere. Talk about those eligibility requirements, the application process, maybe look at some strategies to help you maximize the probability of getting that funding and those funding opportunities. Look at what some of the estimated amounts might be for your grants. Look at ways that the Canada Job Grant Program can help you utilize training to help retain your talent. And again, these days, talent management is very big in terms of something that's important to organizations right across all different sectors. And how to identify and access the training, and then how some of these programs can help you boost your productivity at the employee level, certainly in sales. Thanks. Slide, please. All right, so we've done some introductions, and you've had some welcome words from Rupin representing CPSA. Again, we'll talk about the importance of training for your organization, main theme being the Canada Job Grant Program. We do describe it as one of the best kept secrets. And so, we want to make sure that secret gets out. And again, how it's going to benefit you, learning more about the program and process. And then we do have an opportunity for questions and answers. So why is training and development important? Well, you look at every organization that does research out there, from Harvard Business School to CPSA, and everybody makes a case for the fact that good training programs will allow people to grow in their jobs. They will attract top-notch candidates, and they'll retain your best people. And they'll motivate your people to be able to reach some new heights in terms of how they do their work, they do their job, and they provide value to you. So it's the if you think about what training does for people, like just being asked to go on a training program, sometimes think of it this way, it almost flatters people. Yeah, there's especially salespeople where, they're being asked to participate in something that's going to benefit them and make them better at their craft and what they do. So that's, one thing that's important. I mentioned the term engagement before, and it definitely does that, engages and motivates. The second thing that you'll be able to see is that you will see some increased productivity from your people. So you might have really good salespeople. Some of them might be approaching great, but everybody has an opportunity to get better at their craft. And so whatever that is, we zero in through the training processes that CPSA, JTX, and others do. We zero in on helping close those gaps and making your salespeople perform better. And so, again, what we're looking for, sell better, sell more, sell quicker, and sell more profitably. That's the goal, right? And of course, if your people are well trained and they've got that bit of an edge over your competitors, it will give you that competitive advantage that is worth a lot of money to you from a profitability perspective as well. Rupalin? So again, if you look at why training is important, so really, really significant elements. There's two significant ones. One is it does help create a more positive company culture. And it does provide that opportunity for career growth for people that people are looking for. You think about A players out there that you want to hire into your organizations. What are they looking for? They're looking to come into your organization and to grow and move forward. And so certainly training provides that opportunity for you to demonstrate to them that you're committed to them. And again, this is what A players are constantly looking for, right? Amato?
Yep. Thank you, Tony. Good morning. And my name is Amato Di Civita, and I am the other co-founder along with Tony of JTX. And JTX is basically a sales effectiveness, sales training consulting firm. So we help companies with their sales, everything from training to compensation and so on. The culture, what you're seeing here is the definition of a positive company culture, which is what a lot of people are looking for. It's communication, it's development, it's career growth. And that is all now seen as a joint responsibility between the employee and the employer. People are looking for you, the company, to provide an infrastructure for support. They understand that they have a responsibility in there as well, but the infrastructure must be there for them to grow, for them to take advantage of mentorship initiatives and training programs. I would qualify, and these are, the reasons for these changes are many, but let's just call it, it's new generational values, which brings aboard a new mindset. And I characterize that, the situation as it was before. The theme was, here's what I will do to make you want to keep me forever. Now, it's here's what I want if you want to keep me, or at least for a while. Okay? Rupalin, next one. 6 things that Gen Zers, which is going to be the crux of the people you'll be looking into, bringing into these entry-level jobs, they define their career success, again, as a joint responsibility with their employer. It's no longer, please hire me, I'll do my best, and I'll work as many hours as I need to, because career is the most important. Now it's like, how can we work together? This is my success is a joint responsibility with you, the employer. And when you can provide me with that framework, then we've got a deal. Then I'm much more open to you. So a lot of them choose their opportunity based on this. So 87% of grads say L&D benefits are either important or essential when looking for a job. And 63% of grads say developing advanced skills in their field is essential to a definition of career. So this is definitely one thing that people will be looking to. And as Tony explained, this is one way to attract people in. It's also a very effective way to keep them and to grow them inside of your organization, especially in a tight labor market as we know it now. Rupal, next one. So a Gallup study on employee engagement, none of this is going to surprise you. Maybe just the numbers may vary between one industry or another, but these are probably the most important metric in any company, right? So absenteeism, decrease in turnover, increase in profitability, increase in productivity, increase in customer loyalty. These are all the things that you want to see your employees and your new employees focused in on. And if they are engaged, then this is the degree of effectiveness that you can look. This is the percent of effectiveness that they will influence all of these. So you want people to be focused on these key metrics, right? Next one, Rupal. So in case we need more proof, well, here it is. This is from Salesforce. And this pertains to sales training specifically, okay? None of this is going to amaze you, I'm sure. Companies that invest in training are 57% more effective at sales than their competitors. And we'll see a little bit later why. On an individual level, sales training can boost a sales rep's performance by an average of 20%. Sales training reaps a staggering 353% ROI for the average company. And quite frankly, Tony and I have witnessed this kind of ROI with companies we've worked for in the last 5 or 6 years, and in some cases, it even exceeded 353% ROI. Continuous training is set to result in 50% higher net sales per rep. And again, I think that's a conservative number. And high growth companies are twice as likely to provide customers training to their employees, depending on their sales teams, right? So the bigger companies, the growth companies probably have more resources. They instinctively leverage sales training for their success and their growth a little more than smaller companies who have less limited resources, okay? Yet, Rupal, next one. In spite of all this, only 70% of sales professionals say they received no formal sales training in the last 12 months, 70%. And only 17% of companies have an effective sales training program. So why? Why is that? Next one, Rupal. Well, here's a few reasons. Many of these are misconception, but we wanted to provide you with some reasons that, you know, people like Tony and I who are in this business sort of see and hear on a regular basis. Well, sales training is somewhat effective, but is not sustainable. And in fact, when the training program is over, my people go back to the same old, same old. There's an industry truism, by the way, that says there's a 90-90-90 rule. 90% of your people will forget 90% of the content within 90 days if the so-called training is not reinforced and implemented, okay? So there's a reason for that. Also, it's seen as time-consuming. So people don't want to distract their sales force, disrupt their flow. They don't want to take them off their game, and they believe that sales training will do that. Sales training will stop their world, teach them something new, and then hope that they understand and they implement. That's the old-fashioned sales training, not the new custom sales training based on Salesforce intelligence. Third one is seen as an expense rather than an investment. You've all seen this, right? People see that as, here's the number of dollars we need to plan for, and it's not an HR activity, it's an operations investment, not expense. Not everyone sort of thinks of training along those lines, okay? And it's dollars. It's not super big dollars depending on your industry, but obviously if it's seen as an expense, it's an expense that most often people would rather do without. You know, the old saying of sometimes we think we can't afford to become better. And it's true. Sometimes we don't see things as far over as we should. So we wanted to give you a sense of why is it important, who's doing it, how to do it, because what Brian's going to talk about is by far, and I've been involved along with Brian and along with Tony for the last 10, 15 years with this program. It's nothing new, but it's probably one of the most straightforward, generous sales grants, non-redeemable grants that we've ever seen. And unfortunately, it's a well-kept secret. A lot of companies don't know. Those who know, they know. They've taken advantage of it, but a lot of companies still don't know because, quite frankly, the government doesn't do a very, very good job in publicizing it. Okay? But to tell you all about that, here's Mr. Cookson of RDP Associates.
Thanks, Amato. Pleasure to be here today. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about the Canada Jobs Grant. And I mean, it sounds a little funny when it says Jobs Grant. It sounds like it's going to give you money for hiring, but it's not. It's for training. So to keep that in mind. So I'm managing director of RDP Associates. We've been around for a long time, since 1987. Basically, we help companies with all forms of government assistance. Everything from like shred tax credits to government grants for R&D, for training, for hiring, and for export and general expansion. So that's what we do. We also operate in other countries as well, where we do the same thing for companies in those countries as well as in Canada. And then we work right across Canada as well. Slide. So what is the Canada Jobs Grant? You know, so as was mentioned, I think Tony maybe mentioned it at the outset, is that this is a joint federal provincial program. Now, not all provinces have opted in, but most have, and I'll kind of go through a list. But it's a joint program. So what that means is that while the feds kick in money, it's the provinces that will operate the program, and the provinces are also kicking in money and resources as well. So what that also means is that each province has the right to kind of change and put a few nuances on the program that they want. So not every province has exactly the same rules or criteria for applying, but it's pretty close. And the reason I picked Ontario as an example, because it's kind of the most common of all the provinces, and you know, 90% of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be true in respect of applying in other provinces under this program. I just didn't want to have to go through every single province and all the nuances and rules. That would just take up too much time. So ultimately, what's the government trying to do here? Well, there's kind of two motives. One is kind of the altruistic motive where, yes, they think training's important, as Amato and Tony mentioned that, you know, employees want training. That's one of the key things that they want in their position. They want that. So, you know, Canada, you know, wants to keep current. They want to keep their, you know, the employment out there. They want to keep them current. They want to, you know, upgrade the skills level and things like that. But the other motive that the government has is that, well, if employees upgrade their skill level, the assumption is that they're going to make more money. They're either going to do better in their job, or they're going to get a promotion and they're going to make more money. And why is that good? They pay more taxes. So now the government's getting a return on their investment in terms of giving out this grant, in seeing additional tax dollars coming back because employees are upgrading their skill set. So when you're applying, keep that in mind when you're applying for the grant, that one of the things that the government really looks for is that, you know, are we going to see some money back here? Now, you don't have to put it in those terms, but what you want to be able to really focus on is, hey, by upskilling our staff, they're going to do better. They're going to make more money. You know, and that's a good thing to say to the government, because they see more tax dollars from that. So that's an important point to keep in mind. So it is a very good program, as I think Amato and Tony again alluded to. It's reasonably well funded. I'll go into some points on that. And many companies have a good chance of getting a grant. And I'll comment on, you know, applying for kind of grants in general, some things that you need to keep in mind. Rupelin? Okay, so in Ontario, generally there is some caps as to how much training support you can get per employee. So in Ontario, it's 10,000. Now that's pretty generous. You know, generally when we assist companies with a grant, we don't see too many applications go in where it's more than 10 grand per employee. But that's fairly generous. Now in Ontario, if you have less than 100 employees, the government will kick in 5/6 of the training costs. Well, that's 83%. So that's extremely generous. I mean, that's actually pretty amazing when you think about it. They're going to cover 83% of the cost of the training if you have less than 100 employees. That's almost a no-brainer, you know, if you know what I mean. If you have more than 100, they'll cover 50%. Again, in my opinion, very, very generous. Now, under this program, as long as you have less than 25 participants, you can apply under this program. Now, if you have more than 25, it doesn't preclude you from getting funding. It's just that in that case, you really need to speak to the provincial program and say, you know, we've got more than 25, because there's a special kind of application that you need to go through with them where it's more than 25. Slide. So here's just an example of some of the other provinces that offer this program. And this is really just for your consideration. I'm not going to go through in a lot of detail and, you know, talk about the various ranges, but this kind of provides you how much coverage you're going to get, up, you know, what the funding caps are per employee. But you can see there is a range there from province to province. One thing I should mention is Quebec, they do have their own training grant. It's not federal provincial, so you can contact the Quebec authorities for that particular training grant. The other thing I'll mention too is that some of these programs may not be, provincial programs, I should say, may not be open right now. So just double check that it's open. Now it is April, so most agencies get refunded the 1st of April. So, you know, most of these programs, if they're not open right now, should be opening fairly soon. But just double check if you're going to apply yourself that the program is open. But it generally is kind of ongoing. Yeah, thanks, Rupelin. That's great. Next slide. So what are eligible training costs? Well, basically the main training cost is what you're going to pay for the training, the fee or the tuition, what they say here. There are other costs that are covered, like textbooks, software, as it's required for the training itself. And that there's a cap on that of 500 for each. Any mandatory student fees, any examination fees, and travel costs. Again, a maximum support of 500 per trainee if it's more than 24 kilometers away. So just keep those other costs in mind. Sometimes they're missed, and so if they apply, by all means, make sure you claim them. Slide. Okay, so one of the key things about grants, and this is about grants basically in general, is that you really need to get approval before you take the training. So you can put down a deposit on the training. That's fine. That's not going to preclude you from receiving your grant. But you don't want to take the training before you've received approval. Then you won't be covered. So that's kind of an important thing, is that you make sure you get that approval before you undertake any training. Rupelin? Okay, so what's eligible training? So eligible training has to be provided by certain entities. Now, for the most part, for what we see, it's the 4th bullet point, the private trainers. You know, that's where we see, like, you know, I mean, Amato and Tony would be considered a private trainer. And we typically see that. Now, here it says operating in compliance with the Private Career Act, that sort of thing. What that basically is saying is that the person providing the training just has to have the experience and background to provide the training. Basically, we haven't seen any situations where a grant was denied because the trainer didn't have the qualifications or in compliance with this. But it's not a real stringent requirement. They just need to have the background. And obviously Amato and Tony have it here, and that's not an issue. But then, keep in mind, colleges, universities, school boards, union-based training sessions, they also are eligible. So any courses taking at these venues can qualify as well. Slide. Now, also product vendors can qualify, but here, and this is an important point, we get this question quite a bit. Product vendors aren't allowed to offer training that is related to their product or service. So say you're buying a piece of equipment and the company selling you the equipment had to come in and train your staff on how to use the equipment. That training wouldn't qualify. But if the product the vendor was offering kind of generic training, not necessarily how to use their particular equipment, but they are offering training just in a general sense, then that would be fine. Slide. So, the types of training that you have are career development training. This is where you're upgrading skill knowledge. And this is the best one out of the bunch. This is the one that, the governments like to see because, again, they're looking for someone to, improve their skill set, hopefully get a higher position in the company and make more money. Then there's maintenance and refresher skills training. That can be an area as well. And then finally, slide, Ruplan, we have essential skills training. So there's essential skills training. Now, one thing there, and I think I might be covering this a bit later, is that if you have to take the training due to regulation, then that won't qualify. So if the regulatory authorities require you to take training, then that's not going to be covered by this particular program. Ineligible training. So there's a couple of things to watch out here. So as I mentioned, product vendors are ineligible to deliver training on how to use their product or device. If it's an executive training course like MBA or certified financial planner or something like that, those kind of executive training courses, those are no longer ineligible. They used to be at some point, but they no longer are. If it's like training courses for the LSAT, the MCAT, GMAT, those sort of entry courses for those professions, that's not going to do it. Consulting services I'm going to talk a bit about later. Attending conferences. Business owners. So business owners, that's individuals with a controlling interest in the corporation. This is for companies, say less than 100 staff in Ontario. They would not be eligible to take the training. Business owners would not. Slide. So also, if you have if there's over 500 employees in the organization, senior management doesn't qualify. So senior management typically is C-suite. So anything below that, so-called middle management, for lack of a better term, would qualify. That's okay. Training that exceeds a year won't qualify. And then membership in associations and annual fees and professional fees, those are ineligible too. But you would kind of expect that. You wouldn't expect that to really qualify. Slide. Okay, so now we come down to just a couple of points about applying just some insights that we've seen over the years. So just because someone's called a consultant doesn't mean that they can offer the training and you could qualify for the grant. So that's kind of an important distinction, because if you read the guidelines for the program, they will say business consulting services don't qualify. And sometimes companies may say, well, we've hired a consultant. Well, that may be their name, but in essence, are they providing consulting services or training? you know. So again, what Amato and Tony are doing here are training. You know, this is training. They may have the name consultant somewhere, you know, on their website, but they're offering training here. So that's all okay. What you don't want to do in an application is say that, you know, this is you're having consulting being done, or it's a workshop or something like that. Those are kind of terms that you don't really want to use in an application, because that is a red light for the program officials, you know, because if the program's tight for money, and they're running out of money, they're going to look for ways to not approve an application. And so they're going to look for an out. So if they see something like, you know, the wrong wording where it comes across the impression that you're getting a consulting service, not training, or it's like a workshop or something like that, where it doesn't appear to be training, you know, those are things that'll throw you offside. The other things the program officials tell us is that most applications are denied because the companies don't answer the question. And it may sound trite or obvious, but they say it's amazing how many times companies will not really answer the question. And it could be because they're not sure what the question means, and so they answer another question, or they're so excited about their company they want to talk about something else, you know, and you know, they just got off on a tangent, and you know, so that can kind of ruin an application. So just answer the question is what the program officials tell us. The other couple of things too is that in applying, if you go through the guidelines, there are some specific requirements. Just make sure that you kind of address them all. And it's a good idea to kind of review those requirements before you do the application. Because that could, you know, if there's any issues that you have, it's good to address them right up front. So go through the eligibility requirements first. You know, take a quick read. The guidelines are not that long in this particular grant. And so you can read through that, just make sure there's no issues, that sort of thing, and then you can go ahead, you know. Generally, as I said, there's pretty good success under this program. And I think that's partly, as what was said before, you know, not as many companies as the government thought would apply for this grant. And usually the higher success rate means that not enough companies are applying, or what they thought. So that's basically, I believe, is that the end of my slide, Ripple? Yeah. So I think that's the end. So I think I'll turn it back to Amato and Tony and open for questions.
Okay. Any questions? Or I have a few of Brian, but we'll hear from you first.
Yeah, I would have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm a consultant and for positive intelligence, and I would like to know if training, this grant is also for coaching. Is that considered training as well?
Yeah, so coaching's another bad term in terms of this particular grant. You really want to call it training. You don't want to call it coaching. Coaching is seen as consulting, and that's an area that they really don't like. So it has to be training. Just focus on the training.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Oh,
I have another question. How long does it take, the whole process from registering till they grant the grant?
Right. So, I mean, you know, it varies from company to company and just how much time the company has and resources they have to dedicate. But generally, when we work with companies, I would say it takes, you know, usually anywhere from 1 week to 3 weeks to do the application, again, depending upon the availability of the company and how quickly we can get the information. And then in terms of the turnaround time, I'm going to say it's probably 2 to 4 weeks in terms of getting a response.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, what we've experienced from beginning to end is once the customer has decided on the provider, and by the way, yes, JTX does sales training, so does CPSA. And often we will collaborate with CPSA to provide the right content in the context of your account. So once you've engaged that, then we work with you and we work with Brian. RDP is a firm that specializes in basically submitting and guiding the application with you. That makes it a lot quicker. It avoids certain mistakes. So we've seen with customers that from go to when we start, it's a month. It's a month, 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. And then what the government typically does is during one of the first training sessions, they will actually either send someone or have someone connect just to validate that in fact there's a training being taken place, right? But that goes quick, and as soon as they approve it, you get the money, right? They'll ask for clarification after and proof that you've paid the money to the provider and all of that, but the money flows pretty quickly and relatively easy with respect to any other grants, and it's 100% non-refundable. It's not a loan. It's not a subvention. It's a grant. It's your money, and it's tax-free in the hands of the employee. It's not tax-free for the company. The company, this is part of the revenues the company must show, but it's not a taxable benefit in the hands of the employee. Okay.
We have a question from Shauna Amato. If that's Shauna, you had a question?
Hi. So my question is a little on the technical side. So I do training as well, and I've looked online. I'm in Alberta, and I've looked, and there were some different qualifications and things like that. So what I'd like to know is there a minimum number of hours? Because I think something I was looking at, it was minimum of 21 hours or something. So is there any sort of minimum number of hours as a criteria for applying for these grants?
I'd have to double check Alberta specifically, but some of the other provinces, I'm not aware of any minimum hours. I know us personally as a firm have taken it, and it was just basically a half-day course for our staff, and that was fine. But I'd have to double check Alberta.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and JP?
Yeah, if someone taking webinar, like the training over the webinar form, not the physical form, so can he apply for this?
Is the question whether if the training takes place over like in a webinar or a video conference format, whether it
Yeah,
qualifies? Yes. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Jasmine?
Yep. Hi. I did want to I work for Teneo Results / Prima Resource, two training companies coming together, and I do help our clients, with information about some grant funding. I can speak to the Alberta grant question. They do require a minimum of 21 hours of training in order for the grant to be approved. I don't know, not for Ontario though, there's no minimum. I do have a question though about tier 1 applications. Typically, when I'm helping clients with grant funding, we know, or I know that, or I have the most experience with applications being approved if they become tier 1 applications, which means anyone completing training would receive a wage increase post-training. I don't know, like, what is your experience with applications actually being approved if they are not tier 1?
Right. Well, if they're not tier 1, I would say we've had pretty good success this year. Now, I'm not sure I could extrapolate our results across the broadest, but I don't know that we've had anyone turned down in the last 6 months that I know of.
Okay, and so they're indicating that there's no wage increase and no like job title change, and they're still receiving approval.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's
But
good to know.
if I could just step in though, there are agency, once the application goes in, it's divvied out to various agencies, as Brian said, right? And sometimes the agencies have their own kind of way of working, and an agency may be more stringent than
Mhm.
another agency, and they may look at that and not approve it, while another agency might approve it. And I've had that exact experience where there was no wage increase or a title change, and it did not get approved. However, similar situation with somebody else with a different agency wasn't an issue. So there's some of that's at play too.
Okay,
So you
we have,
can, so,
oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you can shop it around to agencies if you get denied at one.
Yeah, it's geographical.
Okay, so if you, yes, we have come across that. If there is denial, then yeah, we will. What do you recommend clients do? That they ask the agency that has declined the application for other, offices that potentially have funding? Or do you, I know there is like information on the Ontario grant website where you can, find other resources and other grant offices, but are you going back to that original office to say, okay, help us out, where else can we look?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's always a good idea before you apply to contact the office you're going to apply to, just to say, hey, here's the training we're going to undertake. And then questions like, how's your funding, that sort of thing, and try to read the official and see if they invite you to make the application. If they invite you to make the application, then that's almost a commitment on their side. They don't have to give you the money, but it's a really positive step. So I'd always recommend someone do that.
Okay, just sorry, can I ask another question? Just in terms of the tier 1 applications, do you find that grant offices are double checking wage pay stubs to ensure that that has actually been enforced by the client and their team?
I think that, it's kind of done on a sporadic basis, but if you do apply again for a grant, I think they'll want to see that.
Okay, because we've only had one instance where an office actually followed up with the client to double check a pay stub. Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, and then just in terms of reimbursement, is it basically once the training is paid for and the grant office receives that invoice of paid training, do they provide 70% reimbursement upon receiving that paid receipt, and then 30% upon completion of the training?
Well, I mean, practically speaking, what we've done for clients is that we've done it all at once rather than to do it in two, because it happens relatively quickly.
For sure, the client pays in full, but then the reimbursement, does that happen in 2 installments? 70% is reimbursed first and then 30%, or just it's all reimbursed at the end?
Yeah, I'm not sure about Alberta, but I know Ontario does it 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Like at the beginning, not even at the end of the training?
Well, I mean, no, it's after the training that they would submit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All
But
right.
you know that it's approved even before the training begins.
Yes,
So
for
you're
sure.
getting it back.
Actually,
You're getting
yeah.
it back. Yeah.
For sure.
Just timing. It's timing, right?
Yep. Okay, thank you.
And just to, is there any more questions before I just wanted to say as well that the key to having it approved smoothly and quickly, obviously work with somebody with RDP who will make sure there are no unanswered questions, but also work with the provider who can submit to you a document. The proposal for the actual training is a key element. The COJG people will look in that proposal and see that there is a case. If it's not a case for increased wages, then it must be a case for increased productivity. especially in the sales arena. If you increase the productivity in the sales arena, people make more money, people pay more taxes, people are happier, so on and so forth. And chances are, down the line, the company will have to hire more people. So the case really is creating more jobs down the line, but also creating more income for the people that are working there. They like to see that case, and that's not necessarily linked to an hourly wage unless it's a more clerical job. The other thing Brian mentioned is that not all provinces are participating. Our experience has been, and it's true, not all provinces are part of the program, but even in Quebec, we have experienced an application to the Ministry of Labor in Quebec where a company had most of their employees in Ontario, but they had a few in Quebec. That requires an application, separate application to the government of that province. So we did that. And in fact, the government ended up paying 100% of the costs, but there's no official process. So what we had to do is go along with the customer to the local ministry office and explain the case. And they quickly turned it around. And in 2 cases that I remember, 100% of the costs related to those employees living in Quebec was paid along with the COJG payment. Okay, just as an experience piece there.
Yeah, there is just to say there is a case to be made for using a service provider like RDP and others to prepare the application, because they're very familiar with all the steps. And once, like Brian was saying, it's very easy to ruin an application when you're submitting it. And, I mean, it's very difficult. Once that happens, you can shop it around, but we've had an experience as well where the other agencies, are familiar with the rejection of the first agency, and then it kind of follows it. So to Brian's point, make sure you got it right the first time. If you're not dotting the I's and crossing the T's as they want it, then, you could run into trouble. And, we have a situation like that now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions?
Is it possible for me to ask a question? So we have various sales reps in various provinces. So as a company, we would have to, if we wanted training for each of them, we would have to apply in each of those provinces?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But if you worked with someone centrally like RDP, then obviously they would take a lot of that work away because they're familiar with the circumstances in each province. But the answer is yes.
Okay.
It's where the employees reside that the provincial government is responsible for.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The other thing that's important to remember as well, and I know that this is a criteria with the COJG team, is when you're providing the training service, whether it be sales or anything else, but when you're providing the training service, it always helps if the provider of the training that you're using is a recognized and approved entity. If it's a non-entity, a web-based something or other, it's very difficult. What they like to see is a recognizable, approved vendor. And, they sort of put us through a little bit of the ringer at JTX the first time, but then you become known and approved by them. And I think CPSA did the same thing. So we happen to be approved and well-recognized vendors. That helps the application. And as I said, once they receive the proposal, they want to see the proposal or the contract for the training right from the vendor. Once they see it, it's a logo they recognize, it's approved, and there's a case in there that proves that it's strictly training, not consulting, not seminar. It can be online. Most of the training we've done at JTX in the last 3-4 years has been online, obviously, since COVID, but it can be online, but it has to be a curriculum-driven sales program, not webinars, not workshops, not consulting, or anything else. They have to see the world training, and they retain the option of sending someone to like the first module or the first course, whether it's in person or online. So we've had people from the ministry attend our training modules with a customer for the first 15 minutes. Just dial in, check, ask a few questions, and pop back out, just to consult, just to validate that there's a training actually taking place there, because I suppose there's been some fraud at some point.
Thank you, Amato.
All right.
No more questions on today's content. I want. Oh,
I have
was there
one more.
Please,
If you
yes.
can give me 1 minute. Is there any limitation to startups, or how long the company has to be in place already?
No, no, there's no limitation like that, no.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Okay, well, if no more questions, thank you. Huge thank you to Amato, to Tony, and to Brian for this very, very informative and invaluable webinar session on the COGI grants and the Canada Job Grant. I really hope that we're able to take advantage of this best kept secret, as Amato had referred to it as. And just a little bit on our upcoming CPSA events. We do have Fundamentals of Selling Online happening starting May 6th. Our next member exclusive webinar is Predict the Unpredictable, Expose Big Deals, happening on May 8th. And then, of course, Advanced Prospecting Online happening starting on June 10th. Again, huge thanks to everybody who's attended today. I really hope that we're able to take this information and use it to your advantage as a great opportunity for training. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.